Hi, we're calling because our roommate went out for a run at 9. She usually runs like through Lake Herrick behind grad housing, and we haven't heard from her. And we all just got like service back, so we don't think it has anything to do with the outage. We went to go look to where her last location was, and all we found was an AirPod.
At 9:03 on the morning of February 22, 2024, Laken Riley leaves her house for a run near the University of Georgia intramural fields, a route familiar enough to feel automatic. Less than 10 minutes later, her phone places a call to 911.
Clark County 911. Hello, this is Clark County 911. Hello, Clark County 911. Can anyone hear me?
What investigators uncover in the hours that follow turns the case from a tragic campus murder into something far more disturbing. Surveillance footage, witness calls, DNA evidence, and phone records begin tracing the movements of a man who, according to prosecutors, had already spent the morning moving through the campus area searching for women who were alone. By the time he encountered Laken Riley, investigators believe she was not the first woman he had approached that day. She was the one he managed to isolate. February 22nd, 2024. Athens, Georgia. The trails surrounding the University of Georgia intramural fields are woven into everyday student life. Runners passing through wooded paths, people walking dogs near the lake, students cutting across the fields on their way to class. It is the kind of place most people move through without thinking twice about danger. Laken Riley was 22 years old and in nursing school at Augusta University, preparing for a career in pediatric care. Friends described her as disciplined, deeply compassionate, and someone who genuinely enjoyed looking after other people. Running had become part of her routine, and she often used the trails near campus with her roommate, Connolly. That morning, Connolly had class, so Laken went by herself. What nobody around her realized yet was that investigators would later reconstruct a timeline showing the man responsible had already been moving through the area for hours before Laken ever stepped onto the trail. The intramural trails stretched through wooded sections near the southern edge of campus, connecting athletic fields, sidewalks, and narrow paths students used every day. Laken left home carrying her phone and wearing her Garmin smartwatch, which investigators would later use to reconstruct the final minutes of her run with remarkable precision. Security cameras captured her jogging south along Millage Avenue Extension shortly after 9:05 that morning. At 9:11 a.m., the data from her smartwatch showed an abrupt stop in movement. Around the same time, the emergency SOS feature on her phone activated automatically, triggering a 911 call.
Clark County 911. Hello, this is Clark County 911. Hello, Clark County 911. Can anyone hear me?
The call lasted less than a minute. Investigators later described hearing movement, muffled sounds, and signs of a struggle before the line went silent. Attempts to call the phone back received no answer. At that point, nobody yet understood what had happened in the wooded area just beyond the trail. As the morning continued, Laken's roommates began realizing something was wrong. Her usual running partner, Connolly, had been in class and had not seen the missed calls and messages immediately. Another roommate, Lily, returned home expecting Laken to already be back from her run. Complicating matters was a widespread AT&T outage affecting phones across the country that morning, creating confusion about whether messages were even going through properly. But by late morning, the concern had become serious. Using the phone's location sharing feature, Lily saw that Laken's location had remained stationary near the intramural fields for an unusual amount of time. When their roommate Sophia returned home, the two went searching along the route Laken typically ran. Sophia's dog eventually led them off the trail and toward the wooded area nearby, where they found a white AirPod in the leaves.
Hi, we're calling because our roommate went out for a run at 9. She usually runs like pretty Lake Herrick behind grad housing, and we haven't heard from her. And we all just got like service back, so we don't think it has anything to do with the outage. We went to go look to where her last location was, and all we found was an AirPod.
Do you know if she has class or anything at this point?
She has a class at 1, so that's it's her nursing. She's I guess the nursing school, and she does not miss class.
How did you get her last known location? Was it from her phone?
Yes, it was updating, so that's why we're a little confused. She hasn't moved for almost 3.5 hours now.
How did she get there? Did she run from your house there, or did she take a vehicle there?
Yes, she runs the trail. Her car's still at our house.
Okay, we've got officers on the way, all right?
Okay, thank you.
Officers from the University of Georgia Police Department responded quickly and began searching the trails and wooded sections surrounding the coordinates from Laken's phone. Shortly before 12:30 p.m., Sergeant Kenneth Maxwell located her body beneath a tree roughly 60 feet from the nearest trail. She had suffered catastrophic injuries to the head. Emergency responders attempted life-saving measures, but Laken Riley was pronounced dead at the scene. She was 22 years old. Investigators quickly realized the person responsible had not simply run from the scene. Evidence suggested an effort had been made to discard clothing and other items shortly after the attack. Officers began searching dumpsters and trash bins surrounding nearby apartment complexes, focusing especially on areas within walking distance of the trails. In one recycling bin, they found a dark jacket stained with blood. Entangled in the buttons were long strands of brown hair that appeared to have been pulled out forcibly during a struggle.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
There's hair on the buttons, ripped up sleeves.
Testing later confirmed the blood belonged to Laken Riley. What strengthened the case even further was nearby surveillance footage. A camera facing the recycling area captured a man approaching the dumpster at 9:44 a.m., only minutes after investigators believed the attack occurred. The footage showed him discarding the jacket before moving toward nearby bushes, where investigators later recovered black disposable gloves also stained with Laken's blood. By this point, detectives understood they were likely dealing with someone who had attempted to remove physical evidence almost immediately after the crime. What they did not yet know was that the same individual had already drawn police attention earlier that morning. As investigators reconstructed the timeline, surveillance footage began revealing suspicious activity hours before Laken's run even began. Around 6:50 that morning, cameras captured a man lingering near an apartment building close to campus. Over the next hour, he repeatedly approached the residence of a female graduate student and, according to investigators, attempted several times to force open the door. Inside, the student heard noises and eventually called 911 after becoming alarmed by his behavior.
Okay, and what's going on? I was in the shower, and then I heard some noises. I was trying to open the door, and then I said, excuse me, and then they just ran away, and then now they just trying to look through my window.
When officers arrived, the man was gone. Later, investigators recovered a white cup near the wooded area where Laken's body was found. Surveillance footage had shown the same man carrying a similar cup earlier that morning. DNA testing connected it directly to Jose Antonio Ibarra. The evidence suggested he had spent hours moving through the area before ever encountering Laken. The following day, investigators spotted a man outside the nearby apartment complex wearing clothing similar to what appeared in the surveillance footage. That man was Diego Ibarra. As officers spoke with him, another man emerged from the apartment. 26-year-old Jose Antonio Ibarra.
Right, very slowly. También acá, despacito. Ven para acá. ¿Tienes algo en tus botas? ¿Hay alguien más aquí dentro? No. No. Conmigo. Ven para acá.
Almost immediately, officers noticed injuries on Jose's arms, hands, and neck consistent with a recent physical struggle. What investigators later learned was that Laken had fought back intensely during the attack. DNA recovered from beneath her fingernails matched Jose Antonio Ibarra, providing some of the strongest evidence in the case. Surveillance footage captured Jose again the morning after the murder. Investigators believed he was disposing of additional evidence before garbage collection removed the contents of the dumpster later that morning. Around the same time, detectives examined photographs recovered from Jose's own phone. Several selfies taken hours before the murder showed him wearing the same hat and jacket later identified in the surveillance footage. Testing would eventually detect Laken Riley's blood on those items. By then, investigators were no longer building a theory, they were building a timeline. Investigators confirmed that Jose Antonio Ibarra and Laken Riley had never met before that morning. According to prosecutors, the attack was opportunistic. But as more evidence emerged, investigators increasingly believed his movements throughout the morning showed a pattern of actively seeking out isolated women around campus.
Jose Antonio Ibarra, 26 years of age. He lives here in Athens, but is not a U.S. citizen. At this time, the investigation suggests that they had no relationship. He did not know her at all. I think this was a crime of opportunity where he saw an individual and bad things happened.
Additional surveillance footage and witness reports placed him moving through multiple locations near student housing and walking paths in the hours before the attack. Investigators believed the encounters showed his behavior escalating throughout the morning, ending with the attack on Laken Riley along the trails. Jose Antonio Ibarra was charged with multiple offenses, including malice murder, felony murder, kidnapping, aggravated assault with intent to rape, and concealing the death of another. He pleaded not guilty and waived his right to a jury trial, choosing instead to have the case decided solely by Judge H. Patrick Haggard. During trial, prosecutors presented what they described as a tightly connected chain of physical and digital evidence.
On February 22nd, Jose Ibarra put on a black hat, a hoodie-style jacket, and some black kitchen-style disposable gloves. And he went hunting for females on the University of Georgia's campus.
Phone data placed Jose near the crime scene at the relevant time. His fingerprint was recovered from Laken's phone. DNA linked him directly to the struggle. Surveillance footage tracked his movements before and after the attack, and witnesses identified him as the individual seen disposing of evidence. The defense attempted to challenge portions of the surveillance interpretation and argued the case was circumstantial. Prosecutors responded that the physical evidence told a far more direct story.
There is no way out for him. The evidence in this case has been overwhelming, and the evidence in this case has spoken loud and clear that he is Laken Riley's killer, and that he killed her because she would not let him rape her. And look no further, you have to look no further to his actions 73 minutes before he encountered her on the trail to know what he was up to that day. And so not only does the physical evidence identify him, the video evidence identifies him. His own brother identifies him. His roommate, Rosebelly, identifies him. The people who he was living with condemn him. But his digital evidence of posting selfies of himself wearing what is basically his rapist gear an hour before he leaves his house, that condemns him. He has condemned himself.
The DNA recovered from beneath Laken Riley's fingernails became one of the most difficult pieces of evidence for the defense to overcome. After a brief recess, Judge Haggard returned to deliver the verdict. Jose Antonio Ibarra was found guilty on all counts.
I'll now announce the verdict. In the state of Georgia versus Jose Antonio Ibarra, case SU 24CR0323, count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 4, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty.
He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the aftermath of the trial, public debate followed over whether prosecutors should have pursued the death penalty, but legally the sentence was final. On the morning of February 22, 2024, Laken Riley left home expecting an ordinary run on familiar trails. Investigators say she instead crossed paths with a man who had spent hours moving through the area targeting vulnerable women. And in the final moments of her life, she fought back hard enough to leave behind the evidence that identified him.